Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video, and I think I might have actually done it. I think I found the worst vCore VRM. So yeah, this is the same GTX 780 that we took a look at a while ago. That came with like the custom GPU heatsink on it. That turned out not to be all that great because the base plate of it doesn't actually cover the entire die. And you know, like the card was, I think, listed as broken, but it turned out to just kind of work. But it had a bit of a weird thing about it that wasn't seemingly affecting performance, and that's that it was constantly showing up as being power limited, even though it was only drawing like 150 watts. Now I ran like tests on it, and it was performing on par with like a stock 780. So I was going, well, the reading might be weird, but the performance is fine. So I wrote it off as card's probably fine. What I didn't realize then, what I only realized now after doing a little bit more testing, is that, well, while the card was technically fine, there's an issue with it. And the issue begins with the vCore VRM, specifically the diamosses that EVGA has chosen for this card, because these are not the same diamosses that you would get on a reference 780. So on a normal reference 780, you would get 50 amp diamosses from either Vishay or on semiconductor, that being the SiC 780 or the FDMF6823C, both of which are 50 amp diamosses, which, you know, for the time were like fairly high end, though they were not on par with the IR3550, which was also available at the time. That's a full-on power stage and probably a bit more efficient and just can do more things. This right here is using not a 50 amp diamos. This is using a 40 amp diamos from Renesas. This is using Renesas 2065-8Bs, I think. These are the same power stage, not power stages, I keep confusing them. These are diamosses. Yeah, this is using the same diamosses that we saw on the custom 8-phase gigabyte PCBs for the 780 and 780 Ti. And these are not great. Now, they work for gigabyte because, well, gigabyte has them in an 8-phase configuration and has a really, really powerful cooling solution on them, whereas this card has only 6 of them, and, well, I mean, I don't know what cooler this originally had, but like this thing EVGA usually puts on blower cards because like this has like extra cutouts on it for extra airflow from blower heatsinks, so this probably had a reference 780 blower on it. And the reference 780 blower basically only has a small steel plate to cool this, which is not great. So, yeah. Yeah, so the Renesas 2065-8B is bad. It's really bad. It has a maximum amperage rating of 40 amps. That means the entire VRM maxes out at 240 amps. Do I need to remind you that the stock 780 BIOS, like the reference card 780 BIOS, has a power limit of 265 watts. This VRM cannot do that at 1 volt. Admittedly, it doesn't do that at 1 volt, but the reference 780 regularly runs at like around 1.1 volts, which might go up to 1.15 or down to 1.05, which is close enough to 1 volt where I go like, yeah, this VRM is gonna run completely maxed out on the stock BIOS of a stock reference GTX 780. Like, this is just the worst. This is the worst VRM I've just seen. Like, you know, maybe not objectively the worst in like total current capability, but like, this is a GTX 780. This VRM cannot handle a reference GTX 780 on the stock BIOS without running completely maxed out. And the problem is, if you run a diamos or a power stage completely maxed out, you're doing it wrong. You're not supposed to do that, because when you run these things completely maxed out, like, go into the datasheet of these, they put out 9 watts of heat at 40 amps per diamos. 6 times 9 watts. That's how much heat this VRM will put out in basically every use case for this card, because this VRM basically runs maxed out all the time. Like, and that's not even at 100 degrees. At 100 degrees, these go down to 37.5 amps. So, like, once the VRM gets decently toasty, it can't even do 240 amps anymore. Which, you know, now kind of starts to make sense why this thing was running the first run of Firestrike just fine and scored just like a reference 780. And then on the second and third run or something like that, like you keep running it without letting the card cool down completely, it would just completely tank in performance. It would flutter down to like 800 megahertz on the core and 0.9 volts and only draw around 150 watts. Probably because these things were just completely overheating. Like, they have the ability to raise a thermal flag and tell the PWM controller, hey, I'm overheating, and this can probably, like, this can tell the GPU, hey, the VRM's overheating, and then the GPU will, like, you know, throttle the voltage and clocks and in order to draw less power. And that's probably why this thing was in the power limit the entire time, even though it was only drawing 150 watts. Yeah, because that's probably just what VRM thermal throttling looks like on a GTX 780. So, I did remove the INA 3221 just to get rid of the throttling, because for some reason this gets rid of the power throttling just entirely. Even though technically, you know, the INA 3221's not involved with telling the GPU that the VRM's overheating, but, you know, whatever. It gets rid of the power throttling, so I removed it. But yeah, this VRM is not good. This is bad. This is bad. It has bad cooling. It has bad components for how many there are, and it literally cannot run the card on the stock BIOS without thermal throttling. Yeah, this VRM is bad. This is just like, we all like to joke about how bad like Nvidia's reference VRMs are, but I have never before seen a VRM that's so bad it can literally not even run base spec. Like, that's how bad this is. Like 9 watts of heat per diamos, you need to be able to cool that to just like barely get enough amperage through the VRM without having it blow up to reach like the stock power limit for a 780. And trust me, you are not cooling 9 watts per component on this. Like, you're gonna need like water cooling just for the VRM to do that. It's... yeah, I don't get why EVGA chose those components. Like, I don't actually know how efficient the 50 amp diamoses are, but like, I'm fairly sure they don't put out 9 watts of heat when just running the stock 780 power limit. They might not be amazing, they probably run pretty hot because it's just a 6-phase, but like, they can at least run the card without having the VRM thermal throttle and ruin your performance. It's... yeah, it's really bad. And it's so bad that I don't know what to do with this card now. Like, it's a working 780. Because this is gone, it's now a working 780 that doesn't, you know, throttle in any way other than like thermal throttle on the GPU core. But I can't really do anything with it because like any sort of overclocking I would do with this would instantly blow up the V-Core VRM. Like, yeah, like you could say just e-power the goddamn thing, but like this is the third 780 I would be e-powering. I really don't think I need another one with an e-power. Like, I already have an e-powered 780 that has a really good core and decent memory on it, and I really, like, honestly, once I have that, I really don't need to care about any other 780s, because unless I find one with the Samsung memory, which I haven't, that's gonna be the best 780 I have. So, yeah, I really don't think this, e-powering this thing is gonna be that much worth it. I could maybe use this for like a video where I just like go through the steps of making an e-power. I think that would be an interesting video. And just like use this card for it, because like, you know, the card would technically profit from an e-power, like probably profit more than any other card you would e-power. But then there's this thing. And there's this card, So this is another reference 780 that I got sent. I think I traded this with like a GPU fan shroud with someone who was like, hey, I could use that fan shroud you have. I'll trade you a dead 780 for it. And I was just like, sure, dead 780 is a dead 780 and I can mess around with it. So this is like a Zotac card. This had the normal 50 amp diamoses. That still didn't stop it from, you know, exploding. And yeah, so the top phase was dead, and the second to top phase was also no longer working because like the crater. So with 4 phases left working on this PCB, this was gonna be even worse than this. So I really had no choice but to just, you know, pull the inductors, pull the power stages. Like it's already prepared for an E-power. Like V-core's gonna go here. I shorted the ground to the switch node, so this is all ground. There's more ground here. But the problem is, in my infinite wisdom, I also removed the memory VRM and PEX for some reason. Which means that I can only make this work with like an E-power 5 plus like the Elmore Ampo that I got sent. And again, I already have a very good E-powered 780. I don't think that's worth it. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to restore PEX and VMem on this, make sure it works, and then only E-power core with like one of my direct CO2 E-power boards. That would be worth it, I think. But yeah, so like this thing's already prepared for an E-power, even though I like need to restore some things on it. Why would I E-power this? Well, actually, I do know that at least the core and memory on this card work. On this one, I have no idea. That this one might have core memory damage. Like, you know, a V-core power stage blew up, and it blew up hard enough so that there's a crater in the PCB. The core might be dead. I don't know. This thing never fired up. I'm gonna have to E-power it first to find out. But yeah, like, I kinda wanna E-power the other card first before I E-power this. So yeah, I'm gonna just need to figure out what to do with this. Like maybe I'll use it for that video of like, hey, let's build an E-power for no reason other than making a video. I could see this card being used for that, because I know at least the core memory on it work, and like all the other VRMs are still fine. Yeah. But other than that, I really don't know what to do with this, because like I can't even run it normally. Like I don't really have many coolers that I can use for this, because the VRM is in desperate need of cooling. And you know, I could thermotape some heatsinks onto this, but I tried that and they fall off very easily. Like my thermotape that I have just really doesn't want to attach to like the surface area of these diamoses. So that's not really an option. I have a reference GTX 780 cooler, but that's already attached to a different card, and again, the reference cooler just has a steel plate for this. That's not enough cooling to stop it from thermal throttling. And then I'm just kind of out of options for what to cool this with, other than maybe like CNC a custom water cooler or something. I straight up don't know how to run this card without, like, you know, thermal throttling the VRM, which is a problem. So I legit don't know what to do with this thing. I guess I could just use it as a wall ornament or something like that. But, you know, like it's a functioning 780 at least. I just kind of don't want to waste it away, you know, like the card works, I could do something with it, but the VRM just prevents me from really doing anything with it because it's just so bad. Yeah. Like, I don't know what to do with this. I do not understand why EVGA chose these components for this card. I do not get it. They are not, like, if you use 8 of them, like Gigabyte, and put a really good heatsink on them, then it's fine. That card can actually handle 350 watts. But like, only using 6 of them, and they're not having adequate cooling for them, yeah, this does not run the card at stock. This is not good enough for stock on a reference card. Like, yeah. I don't know. This is the worst VRM I've ever seen, and I'm really like kind of scared that there's like other reference 780s out there that have this same VRM. Like the thing is, it could be possible that other reference cards, not just EVGA cards, have these things, and I've just now found out that that's a possibility. Like I always thought you would either get the SIC 780 or the FDMF 6823C, which are okay DR MOSes for the time, but you know, the existence of this card, like I'm gonna hope it's just EVGA doing this, but like there may be 780s out there that have this same VRM, and oh boy, like Jesus Christ. Like it can't even run the card at stock. You run Firestrike on it like 2 or 3 times at complete stock settings, and it will throttle down to 800 megahertz on the. I even saw throttle down to 600 megahertz on the core. That's slower than a GTX 280. 280s come at like 650 megahertz on the core, and you can overclock those to like 700 easily. Yeah, this thing is bad. It's just no, don't do this. What? Why? Why was this thing created? Why did you use these components? They are already like disappointing enough on the Gigabyte 8-phase card, but like this is straight up unacceptable. Why? Why did someone design this? Why did someone approve this? How did you get this past NVIDIA? Like NVIDIA is like so careful with like approving designs for board partners, because they're so scared of like, oh, if this one card ends up like being unreliable, it's going to like tarnish the reputation of NVIDIA cards as a whole, because you know consumers are dumb and don't know that it's just that one card, which you know is generally true. And consumers don't really, you know, they hear, oh, this GTX 780 is unreliable, and they just assume it's all 780s. But like, how did you talk this past NVIDIA? Or is this just straight up a manufacturing defect? Like, is this not supposed to go on here? Like, I don't know. Did they just get sent the wrong components or something? I don't get how these are so inefficient, and you're running them essentially at the maximum rating all the time the card is under load. You should not do that. Just no. Like, no. I don't get it. It's a hilariously bad VRM, and I guess that's what the video is all about. But yeah, so like, I think I figured out why this thing was like showing power limit all the goddamn time, because the VRM is thermal throttling. And now I have a 780 that technically works, but I have no idea what to do with, because anything I would do to it that's vaguely interesting would probably instantly blow up the memory, the vCore VRM. And I really don't think e-powering is worth it for this. Like, I might still e-power it for like an educational video, but like for just messing with the card, don't think it's worth it. Maybe I should, maybe I can find like a full cover 780 water block for like really cheap that also has water cooling for the VRM. That way I might be able to mess with the card. If I can find like a cheap full cover water block for the reference 780. That's like the one thing that might be able to make the card work. There's still a high chance of blowing up the vCore VRM, but like if I can find a water block like that for like 10, 20 euros, then I might do that. But otherwise this thing is basically useless. Like, I guess I'm just gonna have to turn it into a wall ornament, because there's like nothing I can do with this. It's just like, I already have a card that's, you know, ready to be e-powered, and despite this one, I already have a completely e-powered 780. I really don't need a third one. Yeah, so guess that would be it for the video. I mean, this is just a rant video, so. But anyway, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.